Good morning, church. So the pastor's a little dishonest when he talks about the humble country church, right? So that's a joke. I just came from LA last night, so this is new to me. Well, it is wonderful to be with you, and I've befriended the pastor over the last 6 months to a year, appearing frequently on his show. He's been very kind to promote a lot of my work at Breitbart News and my writings and my podcasting. And the number one reason I'm here is because he's a wonderful man and is really nice to be in his presence and to do something nice for the pastor that's also enriching for me. And it's so great to meet some of you, and I'm hoping to do that later. The next reason why I'm here today is because I do genuinely believe there is a demonic, satanic presence in this country that's ever more prevalent. It's ever more presenting itself to vulnerable people, and it's only through community and through the church itself where we are going to be able to push that out of our lives and let God fill the void. I think that's essential, and that's something that I want to be a part of today. The last reason why I'm here, and this is the most important one really, is to celebrate and discuss my good friend Charlie Kirk. Charlie was supposed to be here, and he and I were close friends. I'll tell you, Charlie got his start in politics and media writing for me at Breitbart News. This started when he was a teenager, just humble kid from Chicago. He'd identified some bias in some textbooks, and he had decided that he wanted to report on it. He wanted to get the word out about it. And so he pitched us at Breitbart News, and me and my colleague Joel Pollack, we got the pitch, and we thought, well, you should just write it up yourself. You should be the citizen journalist that Andrew Breitbart wanted. And Charlie said, that's a great idea. And Charlie got lightning in a bottle. He was on Fox News, he was everywhere. I think it foretold the legacy that he would lead. He immediately struck gold. He was everywhere, everyone loved him, and he used it to take what was just a small kernel, which was Turning Point, and to turn it into something cool. And when he did that, it started to grow slowly, really slowly at first. I think maybe even at the beginning, he was thinking maybe this is something that was making some of the supporters feel better than some of the students. I think he was kind of talking maybe to some people who are a little older, not necessarily the younger crowd. But eventually it did start to grow, and I did what any smart mogul media personality would do, is I tried to hire Charlie. And he said, this Turning Point thing I think it's just big enough. This is maybe 2014. I said, it's just big enough, I want to see it through. And it was a great choice for him, because he turned Turning Point into what is the biggest grassroots organization on the right that we have, period. And he did it not just by talking about politics, he did it by talking about faith and the interconnectivity between America's politics, that our exceptionalism does not come from man. American exceptionalism comes from God himself. Charlie understood this. He understood it was not a coincidence that the founding fathers were walking the earth at the same time, at the same moment, in the same geographic location. God-fearing and thinking how to take those values and create the greatest founding principles, founding documents of any nation on earth. He saw that very clearly, and that somehow had gotten out of our culture, and he was a warrior for that. And my last chat with Charlie was on his radio show the Monday before he died. He ended the segment 5 minutes earlier than usual. Normally I get about a half an hour with him, but he cut me off 5 minutes earlier, which I thought, well, I guess I didn't bring the heat today. I don't know, maybe it wasn't my best day. We would speak about once a week on his show, which was an honor. And he actually wanted to just go on a rant. He wanted to opine. He wanted to opine specifically on that young liberal women would be happier if they got married and had children. So this wasn't some sort of grandiose political statement. He wasn't talking about some bill that's come through Congress. He said, I'm gonna let Marlow run here because I wanna talk about how men have a God-given direction to start a family. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that a wonderful message? But what's interesting and apropos today, because I'm starting off the Israel section of the day, and I'll be back for the media section as well, so hopefully all of you are here all night. My last chat with him was actually supposed to be on Zoom the night before he died. Charlie and I were in a group chat. It's not very big, maybe 10 or so people. People that Charlie trusts specifically on the topic of Israel. And you're gonna get a kick out of what the group chat is called. It's called Saving Civilization. So a little grandiose, right? And when Charlie started it, and he included me in it, I was thinking, that's funny. But knowing Charlie, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't a joke at all. Maybe it was him being literal. And it was an honor to be included in it. But the night before he was murdered, we were on the chat on this Zoom call. I unfortunately was not on it because I was at swim team trying to be a good dad, which is ironic given the previous conversations. But I wish I'd been there at least to talk to my friend one last time. But what was interesting is that the subject of what would have been my last call with Charlie was actually to prepare for hostile questions about Israel on campus. And the way the call ended, according to one of my friends who's on the call, he said the final sentiment of the call was, these are the pillars to save Western civilization: Jews, Christians, America, and Israel. And he said Charlie immediately reacted with an affirmation. Exactly, that's what it is. So since his assassination, a lot of anti-Israel voices have claimed that he turned on Israel, but it's just not so. He's one of its staunchest defenders in my generation. I'm reading some quotes. I'm very pro-Israel. My whole life I have defended Israel. He said this recently. And no non-Jewish person my age has a longer or clearer record of support for Israel than I do. And let me just say this, the night before he died, he was preparing to defend the Jewish state in his final hours. This is why you saw rabbis weep for him when he died. But he did have this unenviable task of trying to unite factions of a movement, the MAGA movement, that's increasingly skeptical of Israel. So your mind probably goes to the obvious place. What's changed? Have things changed? Why do things feel more divided? Israel's a lone Jewish state on earth. It's got biblical roots. Middle East lone democracy. It's thriving industry, culture, whereas most of its neighbors have been overwhelmed by barbarism, Islamism, things we kind of all agree are not great. So the details of October 7th, these are not unfamiliar to you. Israel invaded, families burned alive, hostages taken. Maybe some of the original claims were exaggerated, but what's known for sure is certainly bad enough to merit a robust response. So things were bad enough that what Israel decided to do was actually take the war to completion. And I think this is one of the things that changed. When you see a state like Hamas that believes that Israel does not have a right to exist, then after the events of October 7th, it was clear to Israel that we cannot coexist next to this group of people. We can't do it anymore. So Netanyahu sees that, he's a fighter, but what he's doing that's different is that he's trying to fight the war to completion. I say this, I judge it positively, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to clarify what's going on. He's fighting a war to victory, and we're not used to this. That's one thing that's changed. We're in the late stage of a war. We're accustomed to fighting wars to ceasefires. That's how Western countries have done it since Hiroshima. For some reason, we're uncomfortable seeing a war to victory. Maybe victory feels worse in some way. I don't know, I've never witnessed one. I'm just about to turn 40, so I've never seen us win one. So, but after October 7th, after the invasions, after the kidnapping, Israel says, no, we're not gonna live next to Hamas anymore, we're going to defeat them. Hamas wants Muslim control over everything, and that includes Israel. So how do you even have a ceasefire with such a group? So the world does hate watching this, though. And that's why Netanyahu has become aware of this. He said this recently, I don't want stories that we have been beaten by our enemies for us to be eulogized well in the global media. I agree completely. Even Trump himself hates this. You know, I wrote extensively about Joe Biden. It was part of my research. The proverbial, I did the research so you don't have to sort of situation. Spending a year and a half reading about Joe Biden. But that October 7th, I put squarely on Joe Biden's feet. I do. It was his weakness towards Israel, the worst ally possible. And he staffed his administration with Hamas sympathizers. After Hamas attacked Israel, the United States Office for Palestinian Affairs under Biden called for Israelis to refrain from violence and retaliatory attacks. That was the Biden administration's response. Not to mention he abandoned those weapons in Afghanistan that could have easily ended up in the hands of Hamas. So Trump doesn't want anything to do with this. This is a mess that Biden made. He doesn't want to spend time cleaning it up. And it's brutal. And not accustomed to seeing all this play out on the internet in the graphic detail the way we are. So with the best point I can make here is that while Israel's on the front lines against Sharia supremacy, which is coming, you can see it throughout Europe. You guys saw this week that now in Dearborn, which is in America, by the way, contrary to what some people might think, they're trying to name a street after a terrorist-supporting newspaper publisher in the United States. This would be a five-alarm fire 20 years ago in this country. But for now, it's just one line in a newspaper or on a website like mine. Charlie was aware of the Islamist threat. He had this tweet, I'm going to read it to you. It was viewed 67 million times on X. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. 67 million. So, what are the best arguments against it? In Islamic supremacist regimes, women are oppressed, gays are executed, sexual violence is the norm, freedom is non-existent for most and very limited for everyone else. And we know what Charlie thought about freedom. What's more, Hamas is playing games with food aid. They're starving hostages and even some of their own people. Why are they doing this? Because it creates a global PR crisis for Israel. And it's effective. Given the media, given the global media, Hamas using their own people as human shields, storing weapons in schools, storing weapons in hospitals, effectively creating a genocide against their own people is asymmetric warfare because of the global press, because of the nature of energy online. They understand that all of it somehow creates pressure on Israel. It's Israel that drops food and leaflets to warn Palestinians when bombs are coming. It's Israel that posts evacuation maps. No one fights wars like this. They actually feed their enemies. They warn civilians of attacks, and they will even treat terrorists in hospitals. You contrast that with October 7th, and it's pretty clear which one's on the morally righteous side. But for me, a top argument as a Christian for why I support Israel and why I want Israel to win this war comes in the form of a question. I'll ask it to all of you, get your reaction. Who would you prefer have control of the Holy Land? The Islamists or Israel? We have an example here. It's Bethlehem, 6 miles from Jerusalem in the West Bank, and before the Oslo Accords, Israel ran Bethlehem. It doesn't anymore. Now it's a fearful place, economically depressed and not welcoming for Christians. Now picture if Islamists run the whole Holy Land. You don't want to picture that way. They're wonderful stewards of our Holy Land. And that's important. It's essential as Christians. But there's one other thing that's changed in our dialogue, is Americans have stopped trusting everything. And I understand it. The mass paranoia over Israel has gone on for decades, centuries even. But I really do believe this last round, believe it or not, actually you can trace it to the pandemic, where we got all collective whiplash from all the disinformation from authorities, and we stopped trusting any establishment. Now, I'm editor-in-chief of Breitbart, so I'm sort of an anti-establishment type guy. I've kind of gone up against the establishment for a while. But the establishment isn't always wrong all the time. And Netanyahu is the establishment. Israel is the establishment. And so there is an information war online that's taking place, where people think that, well, if it's the establishment, they must be the liars, they must be the cheats, they must be the ones who are covering up and blackmailing, and that's what they're doing. And so I'll tell you Charlie's number one gripe with Israel, and I think this is the important one, and this is the one to understand some of the fractional nature of what's happening in an online conservative dialogue right now. His main beef with them was clear. He believed Israel was failing in the PR war. They were letting their harshest critics control the narrative, and they still are. He argued Benjamin Netanyahu himself, he argued this to Benjamin Netanyahu himself. He wrote him a thoughtful letter about it. He told the prime minister he needed a rapid response team so that Israel's supporters could be armed with some of the data and some of the arguments, some of the things that I laid out today, plus more detail even, so that they can combat the online barrage of hatred against Israel and Jews. He called on Israel to explain that it is the only pluralistic society in the Middle East, that it is the free country with elected leaders, unlike all the surrounding authoritarianism. He called on Israel to explain itself, that it has the hospitals that take care of the terrorists. Why not show clips of dropping flyers, dropping leaflets? There's even this thing called knocking, where you actually drop a dummy bomb on top of a building to warn people it's time to get out, it's time to evacuate. Let's get some fresh spokespeople out there to start explaining this to the world on your own behalf. That's what Charlie wanted, and I don't know if he was right. I don't know. I don't know if Israel can win the PR war until they win the literal war, and they have to win the literal war. But I do like the sentiment. So I don't have too much time left, so I should probably address the prompt that I was asked to cover. I was asked to, yeah, it's the very end of the speech. It's a privilege to speak to all of you, I must say. The prompt I was asked to cover is support for Israel. How far is too far? That was the question. It's simple. My colleague Joel Pollack laid it out beautifully for me. He covers Israel for us at Breitbart News. Israel should solve all of its problems that it can on its own, and we will be there to help with the rest so long as there's something in it for us. Simple. Israel does its own fighting, but we sell it some weapons. They also develop weapons that we use. We use that port in Haifa. We trade military tech. They improve our fighters. They teach us things. Think about how Silicon Valley has branches in Tel Aviv. Almost half of the major companies do. That's not a coincidence. But for foreign aid, there must be foreign aid only when it's in America's national interest. We're not contributing to their welfare state. We're not paying for their failing universal socialist healthcare system. We're not doing that. Not a penny of American money can go to that. It's not even working. So of course not. But our alliance can be potent. There's so much evidence of this. Think about the recent attacks on Iran, where Israel softened the target for us. We come in, devastating, swift attack on Iran nuclear facilities. American forces delivering a devastating blow, clean as a whistle. That's the type of stuff that we can do in our partnership, so long as we're meticulous and we hold them to account as well. Charlie pointed out something profound in his correspondence with Netanyahu, which he had quite a bit of in the last year. How could a nation be so brilliant to organize the beeper bomb operation, the most unbelievable attack you've ever seen in your life, but incompetent on online PR? That's not acceptable, and they can do better, and we want them to do better. They have to be better on that front, because so long as Israel is the beacon of pluralism and freedom, these are the essential Western values. So long as they're the best possible stewards of the holy sites, and they are. And so long as Islamism is a threat to the West, I, as a Christian, will continue to advocate for the people of the Jewish faith and the well-being and longevity of Israel. Thank you.